Mr Speaker.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This government is committed to improving transport connectivity right across the north of England, and we know that part of how we can deliver is recognising that decisions about local transport are better made locally. That's why we're giving mayors and local leaders the powers and the funding to make decisions locally, with £4.1 billion alone through the Transport for City Region funds to Greater Manchester and Liverpool City Region between 2027 and 2032, and further devolution through the integrated settlements.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As the Chancellor will know, Northern Powerhouse has been spoken about since 2014, 12 years ago. If we are to get Northern Powerhouse Rail off the ground and delivered, we cannot let valuable land that could create tens of thousands of jobs and really boost the northern economy be used as a cheap option. What recent conversations, therefore, have been had with local leaders regarding the proposed underground station at Manchester Piccadilly?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and for the first time this government have backed Northern Powerhouse Rail with actual money in the spending review, and Northern Powerhouse Rail will improve connections between key cities Liverpool, Manchester, Bradford, Leeds, Sheffield and York. We haven't yet taken a decision on the type of station that we will deliver at Manchester Piccadilly, but I absolutely recognise my honourable friend's preference for an underground station, and met recently with Bev Craig, the leader of Manchester City Council, to discuss how the government can support Manchester's ambition for an underground station at Manchester Piccadilly.
Number 12, please, Mr Speaker.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're cutting electricity costs for up to 10,000 businesses through the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme and also expanding the Supercharger Scheme. We're also strengthening key supply chains and protecting jobs through the steel strategy, the new £350 million Critical Chemicals Resilience Fund and the £120 million support for our ceramics sector.
Cartettles.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I welcome the decisions taken by the Chancellor and Government colleagues to revise the EV targets for 2030 following representations from the industry unions and MPs. Targets are really great, but they need to match capabilities and market realities. So what assessment has she made of how this change will safeguard jobs in the automotive supply chain in my constituency of Stourbridge and across the UK?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for her question, and also for the representation of her and other MPs who represent constituencies with a presence of automotive businesses. As my honourable friend said, we are bringing forward the review of the ZEV mandate, so it will now take place this year, a year earlier than planned. And within that review, we will be looking at a slower phase-in of those targets to bring us closer, to example, for where the EU is. Automotives are the crown jewel of British manufacturing. We mustn't let targets damage our sector. Indeed, therefore, paying out money to foreign companies who produce more electric vehicles, for example, in China. And that's why we've made these changes and why we're having this review.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mid-Buckinghamshire is home to a number of businesses that are part of the supply chain for the aerospace and defence industries. Those businesses rely on steel that is categorically not made here in the United Kingdom. So if the Department for Business and Trade fail to rectify the cliff edge that is coming on steel tariffs, what will the Treasury do to backfill that and ensure many businesses, such as those in my constituency, don't become completely unviable?
Chancellor.
The honourable gentleman makes an important point about making sure we get the balance right between supporting steel made in Britain, which the previous government neglected, and we are backing through the nationalisation of the steelworks in Scunthorpe and more support for Port Talbot and also in Sheffield as well. But I also recognise the challenge that some British companies will face, which is why, for example, in the work that we're doing with the EU on the upcoming EU-UK summit, we want to have a steel alliance to reduce tariffs on steel.
James Wells, Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Next week, those swinging 50% tariffs on steel imports will hit manufacturing businesses across the country, putting thousands of jobs at risk. And while they are intended to protect domestic production, industry is warning that many grades in the quantity that they need simply are not made in the UK. So it's a simple question for the Chancellor. Will she guarantee that tariffs will not apply where businesses cannot get steel in the UK?
Chancellor.
Our steel strategy protects the UK steel industry so that more orders can come to British Steel and other steel manufactured in the UK. And we will not allow our steel sector to be undercut by cheap foreign imports.
Gilmore.
Question 13, Mr Speaker.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. At a time of great global uncertainty, it is more important than ever that we deepen ties with our closest allies and biggest trading partners whose values we share and whose interests are bound to our own. It's 10 years today since the Brexit referendum, but the economic impact from the deal negotiated by the previous government is stark. Indeed, recent studies indicate its impacts could be as great as 8% reduction in GDP. I have worked closely with my counterparts across the EU as part of this government's commitment to resetting that relationship, most recently at meetings in the G7 in Paris and the EBRD meetings in Riga. They have been clear that they welcome those closer ties, which is in all of our interests. And at the upcoming UK-EU summit, we hope to be able to conclude deals on food and agri-food, linking the EU emissions trading schemes, as well as an ambitious youth mobility scheme.
Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Today does indeed mark 10 years since Britain voted to leave the European Union. One of the consequences of Brexit has been to bury my constituents in red tape, my farmers who can't export without reams of paperwork, small businesses seemingly locked out of European markets. The EU remains the world's largest trading bloc, and it sits on our doorstep. So will the Chancellor set out a path to an ambitious UK-EU reset, as my party have called for, including a new customs union that would slash costs for British businesses, open markets for our farmers and bring down prices for the British consumer? Or will we have to wait for her successor to show that ambition?
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable lady for that question, and I have been working hard as part of this Labour government to reset the relationship so damaged by the choices of the party opposite, and that's why we have committed to this second UK-EU summit after the agreement between President Ursula von der Leyen and our Prime Minister last year to finalise the deal on food to help our farmers, on youth mobility to help our young people, and on emissions trading to help keep the costs of energy down.
Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Given what my right honourable friend has rightly said about the disastrous deal negotiated by the party opposite once we left the EU, when the next UK-EU summit does eventually happen, after successfully concluding discussions on the existing priorities of the UK-EU reset, won't it be time to discuss the opportunity and its costs and benefits of rejoining the single market for more of the key parts of our economy?
Chancellor.
I understand why my honourable friend makes those arguments, and we are clearly poorer outside the European Union than we otherwise would have been. We made a manifesto commitment that we wouldn't rejoin the single market, the customs union, or return to free movement of labour. Those red lines stand, but within those there is an awful lot we can do to improve relations, and we are doing just that.
Matt King. Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Government is committed to easing cost of living pressures for people in Wythenshawe and Sale East and across the UK. Budget measures are already helping households, freezing prescription charges for the second year in a row, freezing rail fares for the first time in 30 years and taking £150 off of energy bills, as well as protecting pensioners through the triple lock and lifting 500,000 children out of poverty.
Thank you.
My constituents, Darren and Nicole, shared with me their story of hardship raising 5 children on one income. They, like me, are grateful to this Chancellor for ending the 2-cap benefits cap. Would she consider an independent process to advise government on how much universal credit needs to be to afford everyday items going forward in the future?
Chancellor.
Thank you for bringing the story of Darren and Nicole to this House. And I hope that they will be some of the beneficiaries and their children will be some of the beneficiaries for changes that I made around the 2-child limit within universal credit, but also the rolling out of free breakfast clubs to all primary schools and the introduction of free school meals for all children whose parents are on universal credit. And that will start in September and be available at primary, secondary, nursery and FE. And as the Trussell Trust have said, because of the decisions that I made in my budget, the cruel 2-child limit, which drove countless families into hardship and forced them to turn to food banks to survive, will end.
Neera Wilson.
Question 16, Mr Speaker.
Sir.
Mr Speaker, we've been clear that Heathrow expansion needs to benefit everyone, not just London. The Department for Transport has shown that expansion would deliver UK-wide support for trade. 40% of the estimated GDP benefits from expansion will be outside of London and the South East.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. When the Chancellor announced her support for Heathrow expansion last year, she claimed it would deliver 0.43% GDP growth. The Heathrow expansion national policy statement snuck out last week now predicts a 90% reduction in that figure to just 0.05% growth. And what little growth there might be will largely be sucked out of other parts of the country, such as Birmingham and indeed Manchester. So will she now finally admit Heathrow expansion is not the grand growth plan she thought it was, and it will hurt areas outside London the most?
Mr Speaker, nothing was snuck out whatsoever. A third runway at Heathrow means over 60,000 good local jobs and over £40 billion for the British economy. But if I may say so, Mr Speaker, I think this approach rather highlights the Lib Dems' pretty curious approach to growth. When they were in government, they absolutely decimated our economy with austerity, and they now oppose all of the investment in infrastructure needed for growth. This government is taking a wholly better approach.
John Grady.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 17.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Since I became Chancellor, our economy has grown by 2.3%, the fastest among European G7 economies in that period. Over that time, we have progressed our strategy for stronger and more secure growth through fiscal stability, through bringing in an additional £120 billion in public investment, as well as crowding in private investment through the National Wealth Fund and British Business Bank, because I changed our fiscal rules. And third, removing structural barriers to growth, including big reforms to our planning system, our pension system, and progress to reduce regulatory burdens, particularly on smaller businesses.
Mr Speaker, the long-term strength of the economy depends on long-term investment in the UK. UK growth companies still struggle for capital, whilst UK savers' money flows to trackers concentrated on a small number of US stocks. And this is bad news for our future. My right honourable friend has made brilliant progress reforming pensions, but can my right honourable friend the Chancellor reassure me that the Treasury is looking at further reforms to increase the amount of UK savers' money that is invested in our future? Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for his question and the work that he's done on the Treasury Select Committee. On pension reforms, we, through the Mansion House Accord and through Sterling 20, have got pension funds to commit to investing more in British businesses, both through British venture schemes and also in British infrastructure, changes secured by the pension schemes bill that my honourable friend took through Parliament, and for the first time ever requiring that investment in UK businesses and in infrastructure. We're also making reforms to how our ISA system works, so that for people under the age of 65, after investing £12,000 in cash, any additional money has to be invested in stocks and shares, helping start-up and scale-up businesses grow and stay in Britain.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Chancellor's obviously had to make some tough decisions since 2024, But the member for Ilford North wants her to go further in terms of aligning the capital gains tax rate to the higher rates of income tax. Did the Chancellor examine the behavioural effects of such a policy before she made a much more modest increase in her first budget?
Chancellor.
Well, in my two budgets, I have raised an additional £30 billion through taxes to more wealthy people, whether that is through the changes to the non-dom rules, VAT and business rates on private schools, taxes on private jets, the high-value council tax surcharge, or indeed the increases in capital gains tax. And if you combine those things, that's an extra £30 billion secured for our public services, and also to stabilise our public finances and get debt down as a share of our economy by asking those with the broadest shoulders to pay more.
Richard Balash, the Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry, but the Chancellor's recollection of her record is fantasy economics from a fantasy economist. Isn't the true record this? Poor decision-making, with U-turn after U-turn after U-turn on winter fuel payments, on business rates and on family farm taxes. Tax after tax after tax on jobs, on investment, on savings. A country more indebted with higher interest rates too. And a Chancellor unable to cut welfare and unwilling to fund our defence.
I'm incredibly proud of my record as Chancellor of the Exchequer, the fastest growing country in the G7 within the EU, wages rising faster than inflation every single month since I became Chancellor, record investment coming into the United Kingdom, rolling out free breakfast clubs and free school meals, 500,000 children lifted out of poverty, creating the National Well Fund and leveraging in private sector investment. Those things are only possible because the decisions that I have made as Chancellor, and as a result, for the first time since 2019, government borrowing was less than 5% of GDP, a very far change from the mess that I inherited from the party opposites.
We come to topicals. David Williams.
Number one, please, Mr. Speaker.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has the right economic plan, the fastest growth in the G7 at the start of this year, the second fastest rate of growth in the G7 since the election. Inflation lower than forecast, with food inflation at its lowest level for 17 months, despite the disruption in the Middle East. Wages have risen faster than prices in every single month since I became Chancellor, and I am tackling the cost of living challenges, with rail fares frozen, with prescription charges frozen, with money off energy bills and fuel duty frozen. Our economic plan is the right one, and I will continue to deliver for the British people.
Williams.
Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, we don't say thank you enough, so I'd like to offer my heartfelt thanks to the Chancellor for listening. She listened to me, my fellow MPs, our pottery workers and our GMB union, and especially Sharon Yates, by offering a £120 million support and growth package for our ceramics sector. So can the Chancellor now outline how she will ensure smaller manufacturers benefit from this fantastic new scheme?
Well said.
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, but also for the representation he and other MPs representing ceramic constituencies have made. It was a real honour for me to be able to meet the impressive force of nature that is Sharon Yates when I visited Dunoon, a ceramics business in Staffordshire, just a couple of months ago. I would like to pay tribute to her and the campaigning trade union GMB, Ceramics UK and all campaigning Labour MPs on their efforts. As a result, they have been heard, and the £120 million package of support for ceramics announced earlier this year will give a positive future for the sector.
Can I just remind everybody we're on top of this and lots of members need to get in. Sir Melstride, Sir Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given all that is going on, Mr. Speaker, this could be the last time. So the legacy of this Chancellor has been the highest taxes on record. A benefits bill spiralling out of control. Unemployment 300,000 higher than it was at the last general election. The Right Honourable Lady trumpets 2.8% for inflation, still well above target, and only last year it was the highest in the G7, to the detriment of millions up and down our country. And borrowing? Well, could I ask the Right Honourable Lady how much more, under her plans, she intends to borrow this Parliament than the plans she inherited?
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about my record. 6 cuts in interest rates, wages rising faster than inflation, trade deals secured, investments delivered, support for our energy-intensive industries, 500,000 children lifted out of poverty, record investment in our National Health Service, more money for local transport infrastructure right around the country, the biggest uplift in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, and an economy that has constantly beat the forecasts, an economy that is growing, an economy where inflation has come down. Compare that to the disastrous 14 years when they were in office. I would take our record any day.
Can I just repeat, please? Chancellor, there's lots of people who stand on this side who need to get. I've got to get through this list. You've got to help me to help them ask their questions.
Well, the Right Honourable Lady cannot bring herself to answer that simple question, and I will tell her she is borrowing £250 billion more than the plans that she inherited. That is her legacy. Now, we hear that the Right Honourable member, the member for Makerfield, is considering borrowing even more. Does she agree with me that that would be utterly reckless and that the bond markets will not wear it?
When the Conservatives were in office in the last Parliament, they borrowed more than the G7 average for every single year. This year we are borrowing less than the G7 average and have brought down government borrowing to 4.2% of GDP in the most recent data. And we have brought forward our fiscal rules so they kick in 2 years earlier, and we are meeting those fiscal rules to ensure that we have sustainable public finances, a far cry from those that I inherited.
Madam Jogi.
We're all grateful for the package of support for the ceramics industry. It's important for jobs and livelihoods in Newcastle and Lyme, where we make excellent British bricks. So can I urge the Minister to do whatever possible to increase the use of British-made bricks in construction projects right across our United Kingdom?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for his question and also the representation that he makes on behalf of the ceramics industry in Newcastle under Lyme. The £120 million funding will be launched in the autumn. We're working with the sector now, and it will be available for firms of all sizes because it is important that small ceramics manufacturers can benefit as well as larger ones.
Daisy Cooper, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is exactly 10 years since the country voted to leave the EU, and thanks to the Conservatives, the post-Brexit red tape has created an extra 2 billion pieces of extra paperwork for British businesses, enough to stretch around the world 20 times. The hit to growth is the equivalent of the Treasury losing out on £90 billion every single year. Surely, by now, the Labour government and the Labour Party must recognise that if they want to go for growth and raise revenue, they should drop their red lines on Europe now.
With all respect, the Liberal Democrats backed that referendum 10 years ago, and they were part of the government that legislated for that referendum. And on manifesto commitments, unlike the Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party actually stick to our manifesto commitments, unlike you.
Steinbank.
Grangemouth's refinery was a loss to Scotland's economy. The Chancellor rightly consulted on including refined products in the carbon border adjustment mechanism to level the playing field for domestic refining. A level playing field the Tories did not pursue before the closure of Grangemouth was announced in 2023. Will the Chancellor meet me and other colleagues to discuss the merits of accelerating inclusion of refined products in the CBAM?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for his question and his strong representation on behalf of his constituency and the important refining industry. I have seen the letter to the Chancellor that has been sent by colleagues, and I would be very happy to meet with, my honourable friend and other members who are interested.
Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A question for the Chancellor. Could she explain why she's now clawing back VAT on the compassionate medicine scheme, which means that this Labour government is taxing free cancer drugs given to children? Will she reverse this decision because patients are starting to miss out on the treatments they really need?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I regret to inform the member opposite that this was a policy that was implemented by his government. It was in 2023 that HMRC wrote to businesses that were not paying the VAT, unlike some others that were, and began the enforcement action. It started under his government. But I recognise, Mr. Speaker, the challenges that these rules are causing, and so I do want to today confirm that the government will soon bring forward a new approach consisting of changes either to the VAT rules, Mr. Speaker, or a reimbursement scheme. The changes will be effective for donations of medicines made on or after today.
In all our constituencies, small hospitality businesses such as Shotsmiths in Beckenham and the Alma pub in Crystal Palace provide important third spaces, bringing life to our high streets and providing good jobs. The Chancellor has visited my constituency to outline additional support for local pubs. Can she set out what further steps she is taking to ensure that these small businesses can grow and thrive?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend very much for that question. And not only have I visited his constituency, I think I went to school in his constituency, and I am well aware of many of the pubs in Beckenham and Penge. This summer, the Great British Summer Savings from this Thursday will benefit businesses in Beckenham and Penge and around the country, where dinners in restaurants, pubs, cafes and bars for children will see their VAT rate cut, and children's entertainment venues as well in Beckenham and Penge around the country will also see cuts in VAT.
Today marks 10 years since the Brexit referendum, and since that day we've had 10 Home Secretaries, 9 Foreign Secretaries, 8 Chancellors, 7 Defence Secretaries and 6 Prime Ministers. So would the Chancellor agree with me that such instability has acted as a brake on growth in this country, and can she set out what she plans to do to reverse that trend?
Well, in the first quarter of this year, we were the fastest growing economy in the G7. And since I became Chancellor, we've had growth of 2.3%, which is the second fastest rate of growth in the G7. We are growing our economy by bringing investment and stability back to the UK, and businesses are following our lead by investing in our country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Chancellor announced the biggest insourcing of government caterers, cleaners and security officers that we have seen in a very long time when the current contract ends. Does she agree that this move will finally recognise workers that have been undervalued and underappreciated for far too long?
Chancellor.
When we were in opposition, I promised the biggest wave of insourcing in a generation, and we are now working in government to deliver exactly that. The GPA contract that expires in 2028 will come back in-house, and that means people working at, I think, around 40 locations across government in London but around the country will find that instead of being employed by an outsourcing company, will be employed directly by the government and will have the same terms and conditions as other civil servants. A huge difference to them and their families.
Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In an earlier answer, the Minister ruled out a VAT reduction for hospitality across the United Kingdom. Would he at least meet with me, Hospitality Ulster and the Food to Go Association to discuss the concept of a Northern Ireland specific pilot?
Minister.
I would, of course, meet with the honourable member.
Sir Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituency of Tamworth has been extremely lucky in getting £20 million for Glasgow Heath and Stonydelph under the Pride in Place programme. This gives local people the ability to choose how this funding is to be spent. So could I ask the Chancellor, are there going to be more rounds of this funding or similar schemes so that local people can be put in charge of how their money is spent?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for her question. The Pride in Place programme provides £5.8 billion of support to 284 neighbourhoods right across the country, including 5 places in my honourable friend's constituency, a constituency that she does so much to advocate for. We'll be setting out more details of further funding in the budget.
Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In
constituency, we've lost the Scott Beef Abattoir and the famous Donald Russell butchers in recent months, both crucial to the agricultural supply chain. Both blamed high energy costs and increased costs of doing business, such as the huge rises in national insurance under this government and big business rate rises under the SNP. What steps is the Treasury taking to support, not suffocate, the agricultural supply chain and other crucial elements of the farming sector?
Minister, whoever.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for her question and the representations that she makes on behalf of the businesses in her constituency. This government is taking every step we can within the tight fiscal constraints that we inherited from the previous government to make sure that we can reform and invest in our business rate system, to make sure that we can raise revenue in a fair and a sustainable way. But I am sure that the Chancellor and colleagues across government will continue to listen to representations and consider what further changes we can make at the budget to support businesses.
David Burton-Sampson.
Mr. Speaker, the Tory government squandered billions of pounds of public money, billions of pounds of public money on COVID fraud, waste and corruption. Can she tell the House what measures she's taking to address this on behalf of our taxpayers?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. Today, the government has responded to the COVID Counter-Fraud Commissioner's recommendations, a report that I commissioned. It confirms that the government left the door open to more than £10 billion worth of pandemic fraud, money that could have gone into our NHS and into our schools. We have acted in the last 2 years to claw that money back, and today set out how we'll go even further, launching a powerful new public authorities fraud investigation and enforcement service with new powers to make sure that we get that money back directly from fraudsters' bank accounts. Nearly 2,000 directors have been disqualified, 86 criminals prosecuted in actions that will bring more money back to the public purse. I want those who have defrauded the taxpayer to know there is nowhere to hide. We are coming after you. You will pay that money back.
Right, that completes questions. We'll move on to the next. Don't blame me. We now come to the Opposition Day motion.